Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. This honorable court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Dennis Jana presiding. God save this honorable court and the United States of America. Please rise.
This court is now in session. You may be seated.
This is a very unusual experience that we'll have today here at Chapman University School of Law. And I do welcome all of you and have a great day in court. So what I would like to do now first is to invite the prosecution for the opening statement. Thank you.
If it pleases the court, Your Honor, the prosecution would like to state its position in the case of the people of the United States versus the United States government for the unlawful war in Vietnam. We will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the U.S. willfully and knowingly aided and abetted for its own financial and political gains in Vietnam, that the United States supported a corrupt regime in South Vietnam, that the domino theory was really a made-up piece of propaganda for the U.S. intervention, and that by 1973 the U.S. left South Vietnam to North Vietnam on its own, ultimately proving through our witnesses and evidence that the United States is, beyond a reasonable doubt, guilty and should be held accountable for an unlawful war in Vietnam.
All right, let's have opening statement for the defense. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Judge Jana, prosecution, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I am Brady Cahush, and I am one of the co-counsel of the defense, and we are defending the United States government versus the people of the United States in the accusations of an unlawful war in Vietnam. We will plead not guilty to count 1 due to the United States' sole purpose of Vietnam was to prevent the spread of communism, which goes against the United States policy of containment as stated in NSC 68. We will plead not guilty to count 2 because the United States government did not support the corrupt actions by the South Vietnamese government. We will plead not guilty to count 3, which is in fact not fiction, as seen through the United States giving economic aid to countries facing civil wars such as Greece, Iran, Turkey, Guatemala, which falls in line with the prior United States foreign policies of the Marshall Plan and NSC 68, which was to give economic and financial aid to countries that were facing subjugation from foreign interests. Lastly, we'll plead not guilty to count 4. The United States government was acting in line with public opinion and had given the South Vietnamese military all the essential tools and tactics they needed to continue a war effort against persistent Viet Cong forces. Thank you.
If it please Your Honor, I'd like to call the first witness, journalist Francis Fitzgerald.
Please.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Do you think we should have originally just backed Ho Chi Minh after the August Revolution?
Yes, I do believe we should have supported him in building a united Vietnam.
Because they did support us during the war too, didn't they? In helping to fight the Japanese.
Objection, prosecution is leading.
I overruled because that is information that we are aware of. Overruled, answer the question.
Yes.
Is it true that we were also talking about eventually giving Vietnam an independence?
Yes, I do believe we assisted them in their independence.
Okay. And FDR originally believed in a limited trusteeship for the country, correct?
Yes.
We basically should have backed Ho Chi Minh, even though he was a communist. That's true, he was a communist, but he was a nationalist first and foremost, was he not?
Yes, I concur with that.
And he wrote a Declaration of Independence that was very much in the same framework as Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, and in his speech of independence, he did include,
we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, yes. So we would have had a great influence on them and maybe forming a democratic government there if we had decided to take that route rather than follow Truman's containment policy.
yes.
Thank you.
You want to cross-examine the witness here, defense? Are you aware of that? Please. Bailiff, would you have these people put in their seats? If they put them in their seats, and one more time and we'll exclude them, and you will return if you are excluded. Let's have order in the court, please. Order. Thank you. Please continue.
Are you aware of NSC 68 and the containment policy?
Yes.
Are you aware that through both of those documents, the United States aided other countries that were trying for democratic processes?
Yes.
Are you aware that those countries were not communist?
Yes.
At the time in 1945, when the United States was considering aiding Vietnam, were they communist?
Ho Chi Minh was, I believe, first and foremost a nationalist, not a communist.
But was he also a communist?
He had connections with the Communist Party.
Is it true that he spent time in Russia and China to gain a communist doctrine and education?
There's evidence that he had very weak ties with Stalin and they did not get along. And so also in China, the Vietnamese had reservations about the Chinese after their...
But the prosecution has already entered into the case use of the historical record. It is historical record that Ho Chi Minh and Giap, during their time in Vietnam, did publish several communist newspapers, and while he was in Russia, Ho Chi Minh did publish communist newspapers.
Point well taken, Counselor. Overruled. Continue.
So is it true that according to NSC 68 and containment policy, that it was against the U.S.'s best interest to aid a communist government?
I do not believe that it would have been necessarily formed into a full-blown communist government. I will not deny that perhaps Ho Chi had some ideals that he may have pulled from the communist government, but as was previously stated, his communist relationships with leaders of very destructive communist policies was very weak and limited.
Let's have the next witness then for the prosecution.
I'd like to call Bill Ackers.
All right, very good.
Right. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Can you tell us a little bit about your time on the DMZ River?
Yeah, we were assigned to the counter mortar unit. We also had other electronic equipment along the McNamara's wall up there. We were involved in tracking enemy rocket fire and mortar fire, and we turned in to direct our artillery fire back on the positions we were located. Now we were generally in the free fire zone along DMZ overlooking the river, and it was a free fire zone. Anything that moved that was fair game.
What's the objection, please?
Answer exceeds going beyond the scope of the question and constitutes a volunteered statement by the witness.
Objection overruled. Because the witness was there, an eyewitness.
We do this all on the spot, right in the bank, and then we would, as soon as we got clearance, move over and fire across the river in North Vietnam. We'd also fire at any truck movements or personnel movements that were along the river. We just keep on firing until there was no longer any movement. Officially, the policy was written that we would not fire across the river, but it was standard operating procedure that whenever we're called along the river, that we would go into firing across into the north.
So you're saying it was against official policy to fire across the river, but you did so anyway?
Yes.
A bit about, you witnessed treatment of prisoners under custody of the United States.
They'd bring up prisoners in from the field, and some of them were severely wounded and crying for water. They were always denied medical aid, food, water, until after they had testified to what we wanted them to testify to. I myself didn't interrogate them. We simply stood out there and watched them, and they would take several Vietnamese. They might have had 4 or 5 prisoners. They throw 4 or 5 of them along inside the chopper. The chopper would fly over the DMZ, come back 10 to 15 minutes later, and unload 2. Somehow, along the line, somebody had decided that they were going to take a walk out there, so they suddenly lost a couple of prisoners. But we never questioned this. If you questioned it, it was simply they were gooks anyway, so it didn't matter.
You said that they were denied medical aid and food and water?
That is correct.
The record show you did not know or inquire into what happened to the prisoners who went missing?
That's correct.
Thank you. That's all.